This is a really fun feast day. It was the ushers were doing a really good job passing out the candles as you were coming in today. At another mass, it was really funny because I was standing behind these bins of candles and people came in and I said, "Grab a candle before you go into church," and they would say, "Good morning," and then they would just walk right in. So, it's funny too to see as people look at the candles and realize something's going on. There's like confusion and you can't figure it out. But it's especially good, the faces of the parents, where they look at the candles and then they look at their kids who are looking at the candles, and like on the spot they come up with some sort of eternal legislation, you know? Like, well, no, for the last 1,000 years, the practice has been that the only people who carry candles are the ones who ate their breakfast without complaining, you know? So anyway, it was great to watch. And it's fun to have this kind of strange, unusual thing for a feast day. Not only do we have candles with fire, but you're holding a piece of paper really close to it, and then the priest comes and throws water at you. Like, it's pretty fun morning. So this feast of the presentation of the Lord in the temple, this is like the final act of Christmas. It's 40 days after we celebrated the nativity of the Lord. So up until now, like, if you left your Christmas decorations up, then that's great, because this really is like the final moment of Christmas. But after today, if you still have Christmas decorations up, you're just lazy, okay? So we celebrate this feast day actually every year. It's always on February 2nd. It's just not always on Sunday. So next year, when it's not on Sunday, if you come to church, we're going to do the same thing with candles and a procession. This is the day that we bless not only the candles you used, and if you brought candles, then those were blessed also, but the candles that we'll use all through the year here in church. And it makes a lot of sense, because if you ask, like, when is the appropriate time to bless the candles for the year? What do candles do? Like the candles that we light at Mass or that we carry, they give light inside the temple of God. So the presentation, when the light of the world enters the temple for the first time, like, of course, this is the day to do that. So why is it fun? Like, why is it fun with candles? I think for two reasons. One is just because, like, to have a candle, it's kind of exciting, it's interesting, it's like the best kind of light. It's warm and joyful light. So candles are just fun and attractive to us in that way. But I think it's also fun, not just because it's unexpected for you this morning, but also because there is the thrill of a little bit of danger involved here. Because we're dealing with fire, okay? And fire, yes, it brings light and warmth and illumination and brightness, and like we light candles for festive occasions, but also the heat of a candle or the heat of fire can burn too. If you just like go back to when you were holding your candle and you're trying not to like get the cup mixed up in the wax and all that stuff, like you don't touch the flame. You can touch the candle for sure, but if you get too close to the flame, you're gonna be burned. So in the Old Testament, the Lord like takes on this image of fire as an image of his own presence and action. The pillar of fire is the way that God revealed his presence and his work and his glory during Exodus, when he was bringing his people from slavery to Pharaoh and the Egyptians to freedom and the promised land. So you remember the story. By night, the Lord appeared as a pillar of fire, and by day, a pillar of cloud. Initially, it was to lead them out of Egypt, across the Red Sea, and into freedom, into the promised land. In the middle of this, though, too, not only does he light the way and point out the direction, but it's a dangerous thing, this pillar of cloud and fire, and it sends the enemies of God running. So, you know, when they're about to cross the Red Sea, and Pharaoh has decided, I'm not letting these people go after all, and he's coming with his army, his whole column of chariots, coming after the mostly unarmed people of God, then it says that the pillar of fire gave the column a glancing blow, which threw them into a frenzy, and the mud clogged their wheels, and eventually the water rushes in and destroys them. After this, after they have like crossed the Red Sea, and God gives them instructions to build a tabernacle, okay, this tent, where he will dwell with them, God reveals his presence at the tabernacle in this pillar of fire and of smoke, or pillar of cloud. And like the way that they spend those years on the journey to the promised land is that when the pillar is at the tabernacle, then they just hold camp there. They don't go anywhere. But when the pillar has moved, then they pack up and they follow where the Lord takes them. So it lights the way, it guides, but it's also a dangerous thing, a defense for what is good, and reveals God's presence in action. So then, Jesus, on the presentation, 40 days after he is born, Jesus arrives. This is the God of Israel, not just in an image of fire or cloud, but in the flesh. Like the God who led his people to freedom is now entering his temple in the flesh. The fire, the pillar of fire, or the pillar of cloud, is now in the flesh entering the temple. And so, like Jesus, who is the light of the world, gives illumination so we can see, is a joyful kind of burning light. It brings fulfillment and happiness to those who recognize him. And if you go back to the first reading, you remember there's two parts to this reading. The first part says, yes, the Lord will return. He will come to his temple to be with his people. And then it says, but who can withstand his coming? Because he comes like a refiner's fire or a fuller's lye. That is like it's like a caustic kind of bleach, you know? He comes not just to light and illuminate, but also burning and purifying. For us, like we received Jesus in our baptism. He came to dwell in us. This whole thing has been about salvation history, about God coming into the world and into the church. Like we've been talking, and what we like symbolized today was Jesus' presence in this specific church. But also, like, we are God's temple, and he has come to dwell with us. And when he came as fire. That's why we receive this baptismal candle on our baptism day. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same symbol as the candles that we are holding today. God has come into his temple, and I am that dwelling place of God. When this fire comes in, it brings warmth and light and joy. God himself, like life and light itself, has come to dwell in us. And when this fire enters us, it does burn. And sometimes it even hurts. But it cleans and purifies. It washes away our sins. So, like, we use heat and light and fire like this all the time. You know, we cauterize wounds for healing. Sometimes we'll take a piece of property and do a controlled burn to get rid of the brush and everything to make it fertile for new growth. Or we'll take metal and heat it very hot, like we heard in the first reading, to get out the impurities. We scrape off the slag, and then you have just the real thing and not an alloy. When we have like biohazardous material, like somebody's got an oozing wound and some sort of gross bandage, like we burn these things. Hospitals have incinerators to burn them at a high temperature so that what is poisonous, what is dangerous is destroyed. And maybe some of you have seen this or used this before, but there are these UV lights that sanitize your phone, you know? I haven't seen ads for those in a while, but it's the same sort of thing. It purifies. Again, the presentation is about the Lord coming to his people, dwelling in his temple, entering in and bringing his light. And it's by his presence then, simply by his presence, not by really a lot of hard work. The evil is burned away and thrown out. But like for the cleansing or the purifying from evil is really the simple and easy part, because also what is good in us also needs refining. And Jesus does this also by his presence. Because if you think of the most generous, noble things that you have done, I'll just speak for myself, I won't speak for you. But like, if I look at those things, if I look at those times, I still can find in there pride, self-attention, like self-satisfaction. I still make it about me. Hopefully only a little, but it's still mixed. It has to be refined and purified. When Jesus comes as this burning fire with light and heat, he does all of this so that we may be whole, so that we may be alive fully, so that we can be full of light and have nothing of darkness in us. And our part really is just to allow Jesus to enter. So like I said, most of the time we know when we have something dark, you know, some sin that we need to confess. or some desire that we need to give up and renounce, or even some sort of lie that we have believed and lived by and that needs to go. But the invitation that I want to give you then is more about the good in you, like these desires for holiness, the desires to know the Lord and love him, to serve him and preach the gospel, to be a great spouse, to be a good parent. Like these sorts of things, they are like so good, obviously. So we ask the Lord to, like we invite him in to those places so that by his presence they may be purified and made pure good. Just as like one example of this, today presentation, like this is one of those moments where it isn't just joy, it's like a reality check for the parents of Jesus, especially for Our Lady, about his mission, and that there's going to be some hard times ahead. Simeon says to her, "You yourself a sword will pierce." This like purifying thing has to do, like for parents with children, I'm thinking of vocations and stuff like that, because often an obstacle for vocations is that children don't want to disappoint their parents, but they know that their parents would not be happy if maybe God brought them to seminary or religious life or priesthood or anything like that. So in your great good love for your children, there might be some possessiveness, some sort of control that also has to be purified, just as an example of this. We just let the Lord be there. We invite his presence in so that his light can purify and make whole. So today's feast of the presentation, with fire and candles, today's feast is one of these early times where Jesus reveals who he is and what he has come to do by his presence.